My name is Chelsea. I'm 26 years old, and this is the story of how one skipped celebration changed everything. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this story because sometimes silence isn't weakness. Sometimes, it's the start of something unforgettable. I can still remember the sound of my own laughter echoing down the hallway of our family house that morning, the day before my college graduation. It was nervous laughter, the kind that hides exhaustion. I had been up late the night before steaming my gown, practicing my speech, and picturing that perfect moment when my parents would see me walk across the stage. It was supposed to be our day, mine, yes, but also theirs. The product of every late-night study session, every skipped outing, every sacrifice. But I didn't know that the people I wanted to make proud would be the very ones who'd break my heart. Mom was in the kitchen, flipping through a recipe magazine when I walked in holding my cap and gown. "Mom," I said, smiling. "Guess what? They confirmed I'll be getting the Student Leadership Award. Can you believe it?" She barely looked up. "That's nice, dear. But we might have a little problem with tomorrow." I frowned. "Problem? What do you mean?" Before she could answer, Dad came in, adjusting his tie. He sighed like someone who'd just been given bad news at work. "Chelsea," he said, his voice calm but detached. "Your Aunt Clara just called. You remember your cousin, Heather?" He nodded. "Yeah, what about her?" "She's having her engagement party tomorrow. At the house. And well, your mom and I promised we'd host it." I blinked. For a second I thought he was joking. "You promised to host it? Tomorrow? On my graduation day?" Mom gave me that smile, the one she uses when she's about to say something cruel but wants to sound polite. "Sweetheart, you can have many graduations, but Heather only gets engaged once." My chest tightened. "Mom, I worked 4 years for this degree. You can't seriously be saying." Dad raised a hand. "Don't make this a scene. We're proud of you, okay? But family commitments come first. You can take pictures and show us later." I just stood there. The kitchen suddenly felt smaller, airless. My cap slipped from my fingers and hit the floor. "Right," I said quietly. "Family commitments." Mom turned back to her magazine like the conversation was over. "You'll understand one day." But I did understand, just not the way they expected. Graduation day came and they didn't show. I stood there in a sea of cheering parents and flashing cameras, clutching my diploma like it was a lifeline. Every time I looked toward the stands, I saw strangers' faces, none of them my family's. My best friend, Tara, hugged me after the ceremony. "They really didn't come," she whispered. I forced a smile. "They had a party to throw." Her jaw dropped. "You're kidding." "No," I said. "But it's fine. I'll throw my own someday." She squeezed my hand. "Promise me you'll remember this moment, Chelsea. People show who they are when it matters." I did remember. When I got home that evening, balloons and laughter filled the house. Heather's engagement party was in full swing. Music blasting, guests clinking glasses, and my parents beaming like the perfect hosts. Mom spotted me at the doorway. "Chelsea." "I'm back." "Oh, come say hello to everyone." I stared at her, my graduation cap still in my hand. "You're serious?" Dad walked up, his drink half raised. "Come on, don't ruin the mood." I smiled thinly. "Wouldn't dream of it." Then I walked past them, straight up to my room, closed the door, and sat on the floor still wearing my gown. The muffled sound of laughter from downstairs cut through the walls. Every cheer felt like a slap. That night, I promised myself one thing. I would never beg to be celebrated again. 3 years passed. Life moved on, at least for me. I moved into my own apartment, started a small marketing agency with Tara, and worked harder than I ever had. It wasn't easy, but I was finally building something that was mine. My parents barely visited. When they did, it was usually to brag about Heather's latest milestones. Heather this, Heather that. The same Heather who once borrowed my clothes and never returned them. One afternoon I got a message from Mom. "Mom. Sweetheart, your dad and I are planning our 30th wedding anniversary. We'd love for you to be involved. Maybe even sponsor it a bit." I stared at the message. I could almost hear her cheerful tone, like nothing had ever happened. Me. You want me to sponsor your anniversary? Mom. Yes, dear. You're doing so well now. Would mean a lot. We're thinking of something elegant. Maybe a garden event, music, caterers. Something inside me clicked. Not anger, just a quiet, icy calm. I typed back. Me. Sure, Mom. I'll take care of everything. Over the next few weeks, I went into full event planner mode. At least, that's what I let them believe. Mom sent me lists of guests, themes, and catering options. Dad even called to discuss speeches. They were thrilled. And I played along. Behind the scenes, though, I was planning something else entirely. You see, their anniversary fell on the same weekend as my birthday. A detail they somehow forgot or ignored as usual. So I decided to make it unforgettable. When the big day arrived, I woke up early, scrolled through my phone, and smiled at the flood of messages from my friends. Tara had gone overboard with decorations at the private lounge we booked for that night. My birthday party. At 10 a.m. Mom called. Chelsea, the caterers are asking for confirmation. Can you check on that? I pretended to sound distracted. Oh, sorry, Mom. I'll handle it soon. By noon, they were setting up at the family house. Tables, flowers, the whole thing. Dad called twice to ask when I'd be there. I kept replying, soon. Then 6 p.m. came. Their guests started arriving. And I was downtown in a black sequin dress, raising a glass with my friends as they sang, Happy Birthday. My phone buzzed non-stop. Calls from Mom, messages from Dad. I let them ring. Tara leaned in, grinning. Are you going to tell them where you are? Smiled. Eventually. Around 8 p.m., I sent a single text to our family group chat. Me. Hope the party's going well. I'm a little busy throwing mine. I attached a photo. Me surrounded by my friends, cake in front of me, laughter all around. 10 minutes later, Mom replied. Mom. Chelsea. Everyone's asking where you are. You said you'd sponsor this event. Me, I did. I sponsored myself this time. Then I turned off my phone. That night was more than a party. It was liberation. For the first time, I wasn't sitting in the background of someone else's celebration. I wasn't the afterthought, the forgotten daughter. I was simply me, happy, free, and unapologetically present. Tara gave a little toast. To Chelsea, she said. For proving that you don't need anyone's permission to shine. The crowd cheered. I raised my glass, the sweetness of revenge melting into peace. When I woke up the next morning, sunlight cut across my room, bouncing off the half-empty champagne glasses and balloons that littered the floor. My phone was still off, deliberately. For once, I didn't want to wake up to anyone's guilt messages or fake concern. I lay there for a few seconds, smiling faintly as fragments of last night replayed in my head. The music, the laughter, the freedom. It had been perfect, not because it was loud or grand, but because it was mine. When I finally turned my phone back on, it buzzed non-stop. 57 missed calls. 23 unread messages. Half from Mom, half from Dad, and a few, surprisingly, from Heather. I opened the first message. Mom. Chelsea, I cannot believe you did this to us. Everyone was asking where you were. We were humiliated. Dad. This was your responsibility. You promised. What you did was childish and selfish. Heather. Wow, Chels. Classic. You always find a way to make everything about you. I laughed softly, not because it was funny but because the script was so predictable. The people who ignored my milestones were now furious that I ignored theirs. Tara leaned against the doorway, still in her party dress, holding 2 cups of coffee. Judging by that smirk, she said, I'm guessing the royal family is upset? You have no idea, I said, scrolling through the messages. They called me selfish. She snorted. You threw yourself one party after years of being overlooked, and you're selfish? Please. I took a sip of coffee, my chest tightening. Not with regret, but with that bittersweet ache you get when you finally stop chasing approval. I just wanted them to see how it feels, I murmured. To be forgotten. Tara nodded. Then let them sit in the silence they created. That afternoon, Dad showed up at my apartment. I wasn't expecting him, but I recognized his knock. 3 sharp raps, followed by silence. When I opened the door, he looked furious. His shirt was slightly untucked, and his usual calm authority had cracked. "Chelsea," he said through clenched teeth. "Can we talk?" I crossed my arms. "I figured you'd want to." He stepped inside, pacing like he couldn't decide whether to scold me or reason with me. "Do you realize what you did?" he started. "We had over 60 guests. People asking about you, waiting for your speech, your sponsorship." I stayed quiet. He continued, his tone rising. "You made us look ridiculous. Your mother was in tears." I looked him straight in the eye. Tears. The same kind she didn't shed when she skipped my graduation. He froze. His mouth opened, but no words came out. "Exactly," I said softly. "Now you know how it feels to be left standing in front of a crowd, realizing the people who should have been there weren't." For a long moment he just stared at me. Then his tone shifted, softer but not apologetic. "Chelsea, that was years ago. You're still holding on to that." "I'm holding on to what it taught me," I replied. "That love shouldn't be conditional on convenience." He rubbed his forehead, sighing. "You're being dramatic. Family doesn't keep score." "Then maybe," I said, voice steady, "you shouldn't have treated me like a spectator in my own life." He looked around the apartment, the framed diploma, the photos of me and Tara, the evidence that I had built something without their help. His expression faltered just a little. Finally he muttered, "You've changed." "I had to," I said. "You made sure of that." He didn't have a comeback this time. He just left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the picture frames. 2 days passed before Mom called. Her voice was icy, controlled. "Chelsea, whatever point you were trying to make, you made it. But this family doesn't revolve around your feelings." I let her talk. I'd heard that tone my whole life, the calm cruelty disguised as reason. She continued, "You embarrassed us. Do you know what people said? That we raised an ungrateful daughter." I smiled faintly. "And what did you say?" "I said they were right," she snapped. There it was. The truth, unfiltered. "I see," I said quietly. "So my worth is tied to how much I give you, or how much I stay quiet. Don't twist my words." "I'm not twisting anything, Mom. I'm just done playing my part in your show." There was a pause. I could hear her breathing like she wanted to say something softer, something real, but pride got in the way. "Goodbye, Chelsea," she said and hung up. I sat there for a long time, staring at the screen. Then I laughed. It wasn't joy, more like relief. Because finally I understood. I didn't lose a family that day. I lost a cage. Weeks went by, and word spread fast in the extended family. Cousins, uncles, aunts. Everyone had an opinion. Some called me brave. Others called me cruel. I didn't care anymore. For the first time I was living on my own terms. One evening, as I sat working late on a new marketing campaign, Tara texted me. "Tara, guess who just posted about you on Facebook?" Me. Should I even ask? "Tara, your mom. Something about raising children who forget their roots. She's being passive-aggressive again." Chuckled. "Of course she is." Then I paused because something inside me shifted. The old me would have been hurt. The new me just pitied her. "She still doesn't get it," I said. "She doesn't realize I'm not seeking her approval anymore." Tara replied with a heart emoji. "Growth looks good on you, Chels." Then came the twist I didn't see coming. A few months later Dad called again, but this time his voice wasn't angry. It was tired. "Chelsea," he said quietly, "your mom's been sick. She doesn't want to admit it, but she's been asking for you." My stomach twisted. Despite everything, that word sick hit me hard. "What kind of sick?" I asked. "Stress-related," he said. "Blood pressure. The doctor said she needs rest. She's been emotional lately." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to rush over immediately. The other part, the scarred part, whispered, "Don't let guilt erase your boundaries." "I'll visit tomorrow," I said finally. When I walked into the house the next day, it felt different. Quieter. Like the walls themselves had softened. Mom was on the couch, her arm resting on a pillow. When she saw me, she blinked like she wasn't sure it was real. "Chelsea," she said softly. I nodded. "Hi, Mom." For a moment neither of us spoke. Then she said, "You didn't have to come." "I know," I replied. "But I wanted to." She looked down, fiddling with the blanket. "You hurt us, you know." "I know," I said again. "And you hurt me too." That made her look up. Her eyes were watery, tired, but not cold. "We never meant to make you feel small." "Maybe not," I said gently. "But you did. Every time you overlooked me, every time you celebrated someone else instead." She sighed. "We thought you were strong enough not to need it." I smiled sadly. "That's the thing about strength, Mom. Sometimes it's just what you build when no one shows up for you." She reached out and took my hand. It was the first genuine touch we'd shared in years. "I'm sorry," she whispered. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was enough to crack something open. That night as I drove home, I realized revenge hadn't been the goal all along. It was never about payback. It was about balance. About showing them and myself that silence can speak louder than anger. I didn't need to humiliate them or win. I just needed to reclaim my voice. And I did. The next few weeks after my visit to Mom felt strange. Like living between two versions of myself. The part that had waited years for validation still wanted to scream, "Now you see me." But the other part, the newer, calmer one, didn't need to be seen anymore. I just wanted peace. For the first time in years, my family didn't feel like an enemy. They felt human. Flawed, fragile, and finally aware of what they'd lost. Mom started calling every few days. Short conversations at first. "How's work? Are you eating properly?" Simple things, but after years of cold distance, even that felt like sunlight on frost. One afternoon she said something that made me stop what I was doing. "Chelsea," she said quietly, "I saw the photos from your last campaign. You've done well for yourself." My chest tightened. It wasn't the words, it was how she said them. Not with envy. Not with sarcasm. But with pride. "Thank you, Mom," I said softly. "That means a lot." There was a pause and then she added, "I was wrong about many things. I see that now." And just like that, something inside me finally unclenched. A month later, I was invited to speak at my old university, the same one I had graduated from without my family in the audience. The irony wasn't lost on me. When the email came through, I just sat there staring at it. The subject line read, "Keynote Speaker Invitation, Alumni Success Series." I smiled to myself. The girl who once sat crying behind the campus library because no one came to see her graduate was now being asked to inspire others. Life apparently had a sense of humor. I accepted without hesitation. The day of the event arrived. I wore a cream suit, simple but sharp, the kind that made me feel like I belonged in every room I entered. As I stood backstage, microphone in hand, I took a slow breath. When my name was called, the applause that filled the hall was warm and genuine. Hundreds of faces, students, professors, parents, looking at me not as someone's daughter, but as someone who had built something for herself, began speaking. "I used to think success was about proving people wrong," I said, glancing at the sea of faces. "But now I know it's about proving yourself right." The crowd listened, silent and intent. Sometimes the people closest to you won't see your worth until the world does. Don't waste your time trying to convince them. Just keep building. One day they'll see. And by then, you won't even need their validation. When I finished, the room erupted in applause. And as I stepped off the stage, I saw something that nearly stopped my heart. Mom and Dad, sitting in the third row, clapping. After the speech, they waited for me outside. Mom had tears in her eyes and Dad looked older, softer somehow. You didn't tell us you were speaking, Mom said. I didn't think you'd come, I replied honestly. We almost didn't, Dad admitted. But we saw the poster online and... He stopped, clearing his throat. We didn't want to miss it this time. The weight of those words hit me like a quiet thunder. We didn't want to miss it this time. For the first time in forever, I didn't feel angry. I just felt seen. Thank you for coming, I said simply. Dad nodded, looking at the floor. You were incredible, Chelsea. Truly. Smiled. I learned from the best, even if it took me years to unlearn some of it. He chuckled softly. Fair enough. Later that evening, back home, I sat on my balcony overlooking the city lights. I thought about everything that had happened. The skipped graduation, the anniversary snub, the parties, the silence, the hurt. And yet, somehow, it all made sense now. Sometimes revenge isn't loud. It doesn't always come with fireworks or screaming matches. Sometimes it's just peace. The kind that unsettles people because they expect your pain to keep feeding them, and when it doesn't, they starve. I picked up my phone and texted Tara. Me. You know that saying, success is the best revenge. Tara. Yeah. Me. It's not just success. It's peace. That's the real revenge. Tara. I like that. Proud of you, Chels. I smiled at the screen, then looked back at the skyline. Glowing, alive, infinite. Weeks turned into months, and my relationship with my parents slowly rebuilt. Carefully, like glass being pieced together after a storm. We weren't perfect. We probably never would be. But there was understanding now. And that was enough. On Mom's next birthday, I sent her flowers with a note that simply said, to the woman who taught me strength, even if it came the hard way. She called me in tears. Chelsea, she whispered, you really are your own kind of beautiful. I closed my eyes, smiling through the ache. I learned from you, Mom, I said. Even when you didn't mean to teach me. A year later, I bought a small house. Not too big, not flashy, just mine. When the papers were signed, I sat in the empty living room, staring at the keys in my hand. They glinted in the sunlight like tiny trophies. Tara helped me move in. At one point she looked around and said, feels peaceful here. It is, I said. Because this time, everything in it was earned, not given. Built, not begged. She grinned. You know, if this were a movie, this would be the final scene. The part where the main character finally breathes. I laughed. Yeah, maybe it is. Then, for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to breathe. Deeply, freely, and without fear of who might take that piece away. And that's how it all came full circle. I used to think the silence after being betrayed was unbearable. But now, I know silence is the sound of freedom. When I stopped chasing validation, I found myself. When I stopped trying to fix what was broken, I built something new. And that, more than anything, was my revenge.